Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in one of the most information-rich eras in human history. Never before have we had such immediate access to knowledge. A single device in our pocket can answer questions in seconds that once required hours in a library. We can learn languages online, take courses from world-class universities, watch tutorials from experts across the globe, and connect with mentors we may never meet in person. And yet, despite this unprecedented access, something feels off. Students are disengaged. Professionals feel burned out. Curiosity seems to fade faster than it should. Classrooms are filled, but minds wander. Opportunities expand, but attention shrinks. We have mastered the distribution of information, but we have not mastered the experience of learning. Somewhere along the way, learning became associated with pressure instead of possibility, with performance instead of discovery, with grades instead of growth. Many learners today are not asking, "What can I explore?" They are asking, "What do I need to memorize?" And that shift has consequences. Because when learning becomes mechanical, creativity declines. When curiosity is replaced by compliance, innovation weakens. When education feels like obligation rather than inspiration, potential remains untapped. America has always been a nation built on ingenuity. From groundbreaking scientific advancements to cultural revolutions, from technological innovation to social progress, our history reflects the power of engaged minds. But engagement does not happen by accident. It happens when people are deeply immersed in meaningful challenges, when they are mentally present, emotionally invested, and intellectually alive. There is a word for that state. A state where time fades, where distractions dissolve, where effort feels natural, where challenge sharpens you instead of overwhelming you. That state is called flow. Tonight, we are not simply discussing a psychological concept. We are exploring a pathway to revitalizing education, strengthening leadership, unlocking creativity, and restoring joy to the learning process. Because the future does not belong to those who consume the most information. It belongs to those who engage with it most deeply. And that is what flow makes possible. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to talk to you about something powerful, something invisible, yet transformative, something you have experienced, but perhaps never fully understood. I want to talk to you about flow in learning, not just learning as memorizing facts, not just studying for exams, not just sitting in classrooms. I'm talking about that rare electrifying state when learning feels alive, when time disappears, when your focus sharpens, when challenge meets skill, when effort feels effortless, when you are no longer forcing yourself to learn, you are drawn into it, you are immersed, you are in flow. The moment we forget time. Have you ever been so absorbed in something that you forgot to check your phone? So focused that hours passed like minutes? Maybe it was writing, coding, playing music, building something, solving a problem, practicing a sport, having a deep conversation. In that moment, you weren't distracted. You weren't bored. You weren't overwhelmed. You were engaged. Psychologists call this state flow, a term popularized by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who described it as the optimal state of human performance and fulfillment. Flow happens when challenge and skill meet at the right level. Too easy? You're bored. Too hard? You're anxious. But when difficulty stretches you just enough, when it demands your full attention without crushing your confidence, that's when learning becomes magnetic. That's when we thrive. The crisis of distraction in America. Let's be honest, we live in a distracted nation. Notifications buzz, feeds scroll endlessly, attention is monetized, focus is fragmented. In classrooms across America, students sit with laptops open, but minds elsewhere. At workplaces, employees attend meetings while secretly checking emails. At home, families gather, but screens glow brighter than conversation. We are connected to everything and deeply disconnected from depth. Flow cannot exist in fragmentation. Flow demands presence, and presence has become rare. But here is the hope. Flow is not gone. It is waiting for us to reclaim it. 3. Why flow matters in learning. Learning in flow is different from traditional learning. In flow, you retain information longer, you understand concepts deeper, you connect ideas more creatively, you feel motivated from within. Intrinsic motivation replaces external pressure. You're not studying because there's a test. You're studying because you want to understand. You're not practicing because someone told you to. You're practicing because progress feels rewarding. When students experience flow, education stops being compliance. It becomes transformation, and transformation changes lives. Hash by 4, the American dream and the learning gap. For generations, America has celebrated opportunity. We call it the American dream, the idea that through hard work and education, anyone can rise. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Access to education is not the same as access to meaningful learning. A student can attend school for 12 years and never experience flow. A college graduate can earn a degree and never feel intellectually alive. And when learning feels lifeless, potential remains dormant. Flow is not a luxury. It is the engine of upward mobility. It fuels innovation. It builds resilience. It shapes leaders. Think of the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, the scientists pushing boundaries, the artists redefining culture. Behind their success lies not just intelligence, but deep engagement. They lost themselves in the process. They found flow. V, the conditions for flow. So how do we create it? Flow requires 5 key conditions. 1, clear goals. When you know exactly what you are trying to achieve, your brain locks in. Ambiguity breeds distraction. Clarity fuels concentration. 2, immediate feedback. We improve when we know how we're doing. Athletes see the scoreboard. Gamers see their score. Students need feedback that is timely and specific, not months later, but now. 3, balanced challenge. Growth happens at the edge of your comfort zone, not in panic, not in boredom, but in stretch. 4, deep focus. Flow demands uninterrupted time, not 30 seconds between notifications, not multitasking, but immersion. 5, intrinsic motivation. The desire must come from within. External rewards can start the engine, but intrinsic passion keeps it running. VI, the role of teachers and leaders. Educators in this room, you are not just transmitters of information. You are architects of experience. You design the environment where flow either blossoms or suffocates. When you challenge students thoughtfully, when you encourage curiosity instead of punishing mistakes, when you allow exploration, you are not just teaching content, you are cultivating capacity. Business leaders, this applies to you too. A workplace that fosters autonomy, mastery, and purpose is a workplace where flow thrives, and flow drives innovation. Flow and equity. We must also talk about equity. Flow cannot be reserved for the privileged. In underserved communities across America, students face stressors that disrupt focus, economic hardship, instability, lack of resources. Flow requires psychological safety, and safety requires justice. If we want a nation of engaged learners, we must create environments where every child feels seen, valued, and capable. Flow is not elitist, it is human. 8, the neuroscience of engagement. When we enter flow, the brain changes, dopamine rises, creativity increases, self-consciousness decreases, the inner critic quiets. In a culture obsessed with anxiety and comparison, flow offers relief. You are no longer performing for applause. You are absorbed in growth. That state builds confidence, not the fragile kind based on validation, but the resilient kind rooted in competence. X, flow in the digital age. Technology is not the enemy, but unintentional use is. We must teach digital discipline, not digital rejection. Students must learn how to turn off notifications, schedule deep work sessions, protect mental space, use tools intentionally. Focus is the new superpower, and it must be trained. X, lifelong flow. Flow is not just for students, it is for all of us. When was the last time you were deeply engaged? When did you last feel fully alive in your work? Learning does not end with graduation. In a rapidly changing economy, lifelong learning is survival, but it can be more than survival. It can be joy. When adults rediscover flow, they model it for the next generation. XI, the courage to be a beginner. Flow often begins with humility. You must admit you don't know. You must risk failure. You must tolerate discomfort. In a culture that celebrates instant mastery, we forget the beauty of gradual growth. Flow is built through repetition, through mistakes, through persistence. The path is not glamorous, but it is powerful. Twythe, a call to action. Imagine a nation where classrooms are alive with curiosity, where students lean forward instead of zoning out, where teachers design challenges that stretch minds, where workplaces prioritize deep work, where families protect time for growth. Imagine the innovation. Imagine the empathy. Imagine the resilience. Flow is not a theory, it is a practice. And it starts with one decision: to protect focus, to design challenge, to pursue mastery. Conclusion. The power within. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of America does not depend only on policy. It depends on engagement, on attention, on the quality of our learning experiences. Flow transforms learning from obligation into opportunity, from stress into strength, from information into transformation. You have felt it before, that spark, that immersion, that sense of becoming more than you were. That is flow. And when we build our schools, our workplaces, and our homes around it, we don't just improve performance, we elevate humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close this conversation, I want you to pause and reflect, not on theories, not on terminology, but on your own experience. Think about a moment in your life when you were completely absorbed in something meaningful. A moment when your focus was sharp, your energy steady, your confidence growing. A moment when you were not worried about judgment, comparison, or outcome. You were simply immersed in progress. That moment was not accidental. It was not reserved for geniuses. It was not limited to the gifted. It was a glimpse of your natural capacity for deep engagement. Flow is not rare because it is unreachable. It is rare because we rarely design our lives to allow it. We schedule distraction. We reward multitasking. We glorify busyness, but we underestimate depth. If we truly want stronger schools, we must prioritize engagement over endurance. If we want innovative workplaces, we must value focus over frenzy. If we want resilient citizens, we must cultivate mastery over mere performance. Flow teaches us patience in a world addicted to speed. It teaches us presence in a culture of constant interruption. It teaches us growth in a society obsessed with immediate results. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that learning is not a phase of life. It is a way of life. The child discovering numbers, the teenager exploring identity, the adult reinventing a career, the elder seeking new understanding. Every stage of life offers opportunities for flow, but it requires intention. It requires courage to disconnect from noise. It requires humility to embrace challenge. It requires discipline to protect focus. The future of American education, and indeed the future of American innovation, will not be determined solely by funding, technology, or policy. It will be shaped by whether we choose to cultivate deep, meaningful engagement in our learners. Because when people experience flow, they do not just perform better. They think deeper. They create boldly. They persist longer. They believe in their capacity to grow. And when a nation believes in its capacity to grow, it does not stagnate. It evolves. So I leave you with this challenge. Design environments where focus is honored. Create challenges that stretch but do not break. Encourage curiosity over conformity. Model lifelong learning. And most of all, seek flow in your own life. Because when you rediscover the joy of immersive learning, you don't just change yourself. You change every room you walk into. Thank you.